Sir Eric, good morning, Andrea. It's good to be back here in your show, and it's always an honor and privilege to be a resource. No? Salamat kayo and maing buntag.
Thank you, Kaayo, for joining us, and welcome back, Vice Gov. This is a very important discussion that we are about to have this morning. And in fact, this is not the first time that we're talking about this in Open Line News Media Forum. I remember years back, ato sa ding nahisgutan, and this was also the message of your privileged speech yesterday. Vice Gov, unsa man gyud ang atuang mga concrete solutions aron ma-materialize na gyud kining long overdue nato nga Metro Cebu Flood and Drainage System Master Plan dinhi sa probinsya sa Sugbo?
Well, first of all, you mentioned about the Metro Cebu Flood Control and Drainage System Master Plan. No? The good thing is that nanatana. No? It has been adopted way back in 2017. Unya doon na nasugdan nga mga projects nga na-implement niya na in 2018 and 2019. Na-stop lang ni siya. So the idea karon is ipadayon, no? Although there's a need to update also ang plan, but there are already projects and interventions that we can do basing on the plan. I'm just elated to report that during the visit of President Bongbong Marcos here in Cebu to brief us regarding the Typhoon Tino devastation, he mentioned about the plan. And it was also si Secretary Vince Dizon that pushed for the plan. No? Nga, mo na gini, this is really the way to go. Na ay gikinahanglan gyud nga we have to look at how we address flooding differently. No? So, kaning plan is a 3-volume document. This is about mga 700 pages. Very comprehensive, very detailed, holistic kayo. It just doesn't talk about structural or infrastructure development. It also talks about policy. And likewise, non-policy issues, no, like for example, waste management, watershed management, and other interventions that we can do, no.
Aron lang masayod ang tanan, what went wrong di ay, Vice Gov, nganong nahunong ni siya para makasabot ang katawhan?
Well, I'll put everything in perspective, no.
Yes.
Okay. In 2013, the Metro Cebu Coordinating Development Board requested from DPWH to do a master plan. No, there was already a roadmap study for sustainable development, and gikan ni atong roadmap study, call out ang sa portions stormwater and water management in general, no. So moto in 2017, nigawas ni siya ang maong master plan. What made it come out in the open was we experienced severe flooding in 2016. When I became president of the Mandawi Chamber of Commerce and Industry, July 1, no, when I assumed office, there was severe flooding which gibaha ang Mandawi City, and most parts of Cebu City, even kanang SM nga area, kanang Country Mall, with only 55 millimeter rainfall, and that's normal rainfall. So, the national officials came here to Cebu and gimit me, no, including the private sector, na how do we move forward? Let's not finger point. How do we move forward? So the MCDCB officials, then the water experts were there, and DPWH came out and said, we have a master plan, no? The Metro Cebu Flood Control and Drainage Master Plan. So motong we all agreed, no? Okay, we will adopt that plan, no? So when I became a chairman of the Infrastructure Development Committee of the Regional Development Council, I started my term in 2016. Gipush day ni namo because kinahanglan magunig funding. So gi-adapt ni sa IDC, then the full council, then it was included no sa DPWH nga kuan gyud list of priority projects no. In 2018 it received 700 million funding. In 2019 it received 1.2 billion funding. These amounts were used to improve the Subang Dako, Tipolo River, and 2 other rivers in Cebu City. Munang makita na nimo kanang kilid sa SM beside the Cebu International Port, na-improve na siya. Although there were limitations, there were challenges because mahunong ang trabaho because doon na pa informal settlers nga wala pa ma-transfer or some engineering difficulties kaya nagsugod man sila sa downstream. So, 2019, up to present, wala na gini funding na nadawat. Na-shelve gini siya. And there was an office that was created sa region sa DPWH, which was the UPMO, no? The Unified Project Monitoring Office. There was a very competent engineer who was heading that. Nawala na gyud. So na-derail gyud siya totally. And we learned later on nga projects were done in relation to flooding, but it was no longer aligned to the master plan. So, when I became board member in 2019, I continuously pushed for this. I filed a resolution in 2019 requesting then Secretary Manuel Bonoan to look into the master plan once again and consider its implementation. I filed also resolutions requesting local government units to align their projects kay ang matag LGU like Mandawi City and Cebu City nagbuhat man sad sila, or I'm not sure with Cebu City but I know Mandawi City nagbuhat sad sila ilang master plan. The same consultant that did the master plan was also the one who was hired by Mandawi City, si Dr. Danny Hake. So I asked LGUs to align their flood control plans diri sa master plan, no? I made privileged speeches. Continuously, I've been pushing for this nga mabalik yun unta ni because I knew already. You know my district, Andrea, when I was board member, was Mandawi, Consolacion, and Cordova. So, every time nga magbaha, mag-uol ko because, yes, we help people magpadamig relief. We declare state of calamities. We do disaster preparedness, but knowing nga naata niini nya wala gyud masunod. Mutay ako yung gikagulan.
So given the commitment of the President and Secretary Dizon Vice Gov to reset this plan, is there like a timeline kung kanus agita makasugod o kanus anasad ni mabubuan og funding? And second question, given nga nag-iya-iyahay naman og implement ang mga districts sa ilahang flood control projects, katong mga ma-prove nga ghost projects, pwede ba ang budget ato mabubo na lang sa dinhi aron unified and aligned ang tanan?
Yes, Andrea. No, I'd like to state it clearly, no. For this plan to work, kinahanglan sad nga dunay accountability sa mga nahimo na nga projects. There's calls now for investigation. In fact, to prosecute those who are involved in the anomalous projects, no? Because there has to be fear of the law, fear of government, before we could move forward with this, no? Kay otherwise, it will just be the same banana, no? Magbalik-balik lang gyud gihapon ning mao na tong problema. Kay projects magyapon fundinganan magyapon no? So that's number one. Now, kanang 26 billion nga na-mention nga totally na fund na diri sa in relation to flood control, ang total requirement unta niini for the entire master plan from Karkar to Danau was then only about 32 billion or 36 billion. That was for 2017. So that would have been more than ug imo nang i-accumulate ang tanan gyud nga nabubo diri sa Cebu. it would have been more than enough actually, I think, nga mahuman na gid unta ni siya nga plano, pero kani manggod dili manggod ni siya ingon nga overnight nga mahimo dayon. This is a year to year plan, no? Systematic nga approach, and daghang challenges that we have to face. There are even projects which I feel that can be undertaken by the private sector. So kinahanglan karon nga all of the stakeholders will buy in nga ato ni siyang i-adapt. And then I talked to Governor Pam yesterday, and I told her nga, Gov, we have to call for a flood summit. Di lang tamo gamit ng flood control, no? And call on the local government units, the chief executives from Karkar to Danao, and would include also the Central Cebu mayors like Toledo, Asturias, and Balamban, kay gibahaan man sad sila, and the other players, no, that is relative to this, no, like the private sector component, and then Dr. Danny Hake was there when the president visited, although lang gid sila magkasturya ni Sec Vince Dizon. He was in my office with Kenneth Cobonpe, who was then the RDC chairman. No, he was very willing to help, no? So moni karon ang ako lang, in my own opinion, that how we move forward. And further, I told the governor nga, let's create a task force or a multi-sectoral group in the provincial level, no, including the tri-cities, that would monitor this. Importante sa kayong involvement niya sa Regional Development Council as chairman, because we will be requesting for funding from the national.
Once na ma-form ni siya nga task force, Vice Gov, not to underestimate the capacity of Filipinos, but part basad ni nga magkuha taog consultants abroad para ma-share nila ilahang expertise or best practices sa mga nasod na effective gid kaayo ilahang flood control management?
Well, I think any help is open, no? But kani siya nga master plan is very, very comprehensive, no? And is very, very, to me, would be very, very effective. Ug ato lang gini siyang sundon, no? Again, there's no limit to also expanding and improving. So it can be a working plan moving along, and any help is always welcome.
Last question from me, Vice Gov. Without mentioning any names for kaning task force summit, this will require the cooperation of all mangyud, no? Unsa lang imong ikasulti sa pag-inject aning murag political bickering in the midst of our relief and response operations. Nagsugod pa gyud ni sa linog, nadala pa gyud ning maong mga issues, no, karong nahitabong Typhoon Tino. Your comment on that, Vice?
Well, respectfully, there's no time for that, no. I don't want to add fire. I don't want to add fuel to the fire. No, there's really no time for that now. No, we just have to really buckle down and get to work and move forward. Well, again, there's no other way, because we don't know. Next week, basig doon na sa Bagyo. Simbako. No? Wa pa man kuno makumpletong alphabet, no? So, again, that's really how we have to look at this, because the way we deal with flooding and typhoons. By the way, I noticed karon dili ng typhoon ang atong problema. It's actually flooding. The recent Typhoon Tino, it was flooding that caused so much devastation. It's not the typhoon. That's why I asked the provincial board yesterday in my privilege speech to invite Pag-asa. And we would like to know, ang ilang storm warnings should include precipitation and rainfall levels, so that we can be prepared. Kay usahay dias Mandawi, makabantay ko, no, bisag walay uwan magbaha. So this is the kind of approach that we need to adapt now, no?
Sir Eric.
Thank you.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you, partner. I have several questions, Vice Gov. Firstly, you mentioned about inviting Pag-asa. we were very fortunate in Open Line that we had, if you remember, partner, we had FIVOX Director Tirso Bacolcol here. And I asked him in Metro Manila, West Valley Fault, there are about 3,000 structures sitting on top of the West Valley Fault. So I asked him whether the province or the LGUs from Cebu have somehow coordinated with him with regards to the faults that have been found in the province. Sadly, he said nobody has yet coordinated with him regarding this, but he is willing to help with the provincial government. So, would that be also part of the plan?
Yes, we will invite Phil Volks. Thank you for reminding us, Sir Eric, and also Pag-asa. We will invite DPWH, DepDev, no? These are agencies which can give us an overview on how we can approach calamities, no? In the case of typhoon, really, as I have mentioned, lahi na. Dili na hangin lang kay aturang tanaon. Preparado naman taniyana. It's really kaning baha. And based on the situation sa Typhoon Tino, there were areas which were not flood prone, but gibaha. And I happened to look at one comprehensive land use plan. Kay kanang CLUP moagi man na sa provincial board for review. That was my committee before. One of my committees sa planning and development. Ug wala gina mo reflect digto kanang eryaha nga bahaon na karon. So there's a need also to revisit CLUPs. That is again part of the master plan. So again, this is really a holistic approach. In my privileged speech yesterday, I requested the provincial board to pass an ordinance to require all developments, most especially in the upland areas, to require them water catchment facilities, stormwater or rainwater catchment facilities. I was appraised that there is actually a formula to that. No, rule of thumb is for every 1,000 or for every 1 hectare, there should be at least 200,000 cubic meters nga ma-retain, or equivalent to at least 200 square meters. And that's not much. So before they could be given a permit to develop, they should have these facilities.
How about katong existing developers, Vice?
Ato gito sang ikuan. We will make that part of the ordinance. Because, I think that is within the powers of the legislative powers of the local government unit.
Vice Gov, wapot kayo ito yung gingon regarding the CLUP. Pero makatabang ba kung mismo ang Kongreso o Senado po, ilan ang ipasarang land use policy sa atong nasod?
Well, karon, Sir Eric, we are still with the current kaning laws, no? And since the call was made by then former President Rodrigo Duterte in 2019, hangtod karon, maybe there's just 50% of the total number of local government units nga naka-update sa ilang tagsa-tagsa ka CLUPs. It's good and bad. Good in the sense nga na naka-comply, but bad in the sense also nga kanang wala pa sila, but good also na lang kay tungod nga makita sa nato nga kanidi ay i-include ninyo ang kaning flood hazard map. Ma-update ninyo.
My next question, Vice Governor, is you were able to talk to Governor Baricuatro. What was her reaction with regards to your proposal to have a flood, and the term I think being used now by the DNR is flood management summit. So, what was her reaction to your proposal?
Well, she was very open, no? Nagka-uyon gid we were aligned because coming doon we were in the briefing with the President. And she too understands the importance of this master plan. And I told her, Kogov, with all due respect, no, I'm really willing to help. Kani kay, sa RDC pa, karon at least na akadiha. And she has a meeting, I think, with the president sometime before the month ends. And she even wants that summit to happen before the meeting. No, so the first order of the day, as we have discussed, is to create the committee, no, the steering committee, which should include the local government units, the chief executives, and the concerned agencies. No, so we have to convene and organize that committee. Then we move forward. Now, the discussion points of the summit will be the master plan. And we also discussed about the idea of bringing back again the Metro Cebu Coordinating Development Board. Because Metro Manggod,
Yes.
or Central Cebu ang kaning concerns karon when it comes to flooding. And other concerns like traffic can also be injected in that initiative.
Vice, another question that I'd like to ask is to address the elephant in the room, is when the question of the 26 billion pesos came out into national television, what was the reaction? What was your reaction, and what was the reaction of the provincial board members when the governor asked, asa naman ang 26 billion?
Well, kita man siguro tanan na surprise kita, no, nga naa din ang amount nga nabutang diri sa Cebu, no. And as an official of the local government unit, ako makaingon gyud ko nga wala gyud may kalibutan niya ng mga proyekta. Dili man ko na ma-coordinate diri sa mga local government units, most especially diri sa province of Cebu. There is a Provincial Development Council meeting, but tagaan lamig lista sa mga PAPs, no, kanang plans and projects, no. And mora na ipa-approve na mo, no. In the past 2 years, we took time to really review it in the PDC level. But there's not enough time to really go through it one by one, each and every project. Now, bisan pag-aprubahan na nimong PAPs, doesn't mean na ma-include that there is a National Expenditure Program. Or bisan magadig nasud na siya nasa National Expenditure Program, doesn't mean nga mugawas na siya sa General Appropriations Act.
Yes.
Because of the budget insertions. So, there are a lot of projects na may tabo na lang nga wagi kalibutan ng mga local government units. That same goes down to the municipalities, the cities, and even to the barangays. That's why in 2023, si Governor Gwen and the provincial board, we came up with an ordinance. This is a provincial ordinance 2023-02 and subsequently expanded to Ordinance 2023-05. This is an ordinance that would require national government agencies and all other offices to coordinate with the local government unit, with the Cebu provincial government. This is just an enabling ordinance to enforce Section 2C
Local Government Code.
of the Local Government Code, Section 16, Section 25, 26, and 27. And if I may read Section 27, the Local Government Code requires prior consultations in the implementation of projects or programs by government authorities with the local government units, and it states no project or program shall be implemented by government authorities unless consultations mentioned in Section 2C and 26 hereof are complied with and prior approval of the sanggunian concerned.
shall not be is obtained, provided occupants in areas where such projects are to be implemented shall not be evicted unless appropriate relocation have been provided. Kani siyang sanggunian, we further defined it in our ordinance nga it's the sangguniang panlalawigan. Kani paggawas ni the executive secretary sent his chief of staff here to Cebu to meet with all of us. And kami, with provincial board, we were asked, no, nga unsa man inyong ordinance, this will somehow contradict with the national policies. But we just said, nga, this is just really enabling the provisions in the local government code.
Exactly.
And then gimiting ang tanan nga mga regional offices, no? He was there, si Governor Gwen, the chief of staff of the executive secretary, and then all the provincial board. Gipangutana tagsa-tagsa ang mga regional directors, and they said, nga, this is what we need. This is a guidance for us. Nga. Yes, we need to coordinate. Now, karon, yesterday I made a memo addressed to the board members. We will now strictly enforce this before the PAPs could be endorsed, which will happen siguro mga by the end of the year. And then before the PDC could happen, where they will endorse already their PAPs to the Provincial Development Council. We will really require them to secure sangguniang panlalawigan approval. Now, there is among expanded and the expansion of the ordinance at 2023-05, amo gining giklaro diri nga there is a penalty. There is a fine of 5,000 pesos, and without prejudice to filing of administrative cases against the concerned official. We will really enforce this.
Secretary Vince Tison was talking about coordination, Vice Gov, along these lines that different governments are not talking to each other. And he did mention that the previous watch was very lukewarm about coordination. But in this case, I think the provincial board hit it on the head. Kailangan ma-inform yun ang local government, di ba?
Yes, and I discussed this again with the governor and said, Gov, we have to play an active role gid tanan. And in fact, you know, I even further proposed to her na kaning national funding, studyoan na to, this can even be downloaded to the local government unit. No? Bring the government funds closer to the people because we have more accountability sa mga tao. Ug naaroy national road diha nga gi semento, niya wala na mahuman, wala na matarog trabaho. Most often than not, dili na sila mo blame sa DPWH or any national official. Ang blame mo niya na ang ilang mayor, ilang board members, ilang congressman, ug ang governor, ug ang vice governor, ma-appeal pa. So, that is I think, and the president, I think, has sent that, gave that message, no, in several of his statements karon na we have to improve the local government units. There are cases wherein memorandum of agreements can be entered into between the local government unit and the national agency in the implementation of the project. At least, diha man lang, ma-monitor na to. Makapatawag ta. Rather than what's happening now, na ang project may tabo na lang without the local government unit knowing.
Thank you, Kaayo, Vice Governor. Before we open the floor to questions, I just want to sing it this last question, Vice. Social media is a battlefield now, and we cannot blame the people for the anger that they feel, particularly towards the government in general. If you could address our viewers and unsa lang ang imuhang assurance alang kanilang tanan, especially to those who lost their loved ones, the property that they worked hard for their entire lives, and para dili mawala ang ilahang pagsalig ngadto sa ato ang mga public servants.
You know, Andrea, kano yung nang gihisgutan, no? Kahapon sa akong privilege speech, I was so emotional, no? When Typhoon Tino struck in the wee hours of the morning, immediately at 11 o'clock, niyagto ko sa legislative, and then we went to the executive, talked to the PDRMMO. At 1 o'clock, I was already in Liloan. Kay si usa ka board member, si Mike Villamor, of the 5th District, wala siya way of, besides I told him, you get feedback from the towns of the 5th District. I've heard nga diha raba agi ang bagyo. There's no way of him communicating, getting info. So when I went to the legislative, nakita mini board member ni Natreluya, mutungin ko nga, wag to na lang ta. Kay, you know, we have to see the matter on the ground. Whatever relief nga amo nakita dito sa legislative building, among gikarga na pamantoy habilin katong sa earthquake. So niyag to me, niya Miss Highway from after Pacific Mall, ang Pacific Mall katong sa UN Avenue di kagian. So we went through the Paknaan Road and then gawas mi sa Kansaga. Padung mi unta sa Carmen because the family of Mike, you know, si Mayor Carlo is the brother of Mike Villamor. Pag-abot na mo diha sa Kutkot Liloan, diha gyud sa kanang dunay San Roque Chapel, na ay nagbabag nga debris, di ka kato, Andrea, murag 5 meters nga thick nga concrete, no? Nga mga 8 to 10 inches. Gikan sa kilid nga da, nabalhin sa tunga. Dili kaagian ang main road, ang national road. So, walay laing tao digto. Nanaog mi, ako si board member Mike ug si board member Ninette. Diha ko isa ka staff. Ug dili nimo to tangtangon, imo tong kunon, dili gyud ang relief and rescue di makaagi. So, akong gikuan ang mga drivers, mga nagmotoris nga ikutabangan tani, may gani kay nagtinabangay, gibuak na mo tong mga kuan dako. Di among gibalhin na clear ang road. Sa kilid, nakita ko, pantay ko nga naman yung mga tao nga, mga basa kayo, mga nagkalapok. Unya, in fact, doon bata nga kanang, I don't wanna kuan this, but it's a lifeless body of a child. And I saw dead bodies there, no? And kuan nga, mauna to siya, that area, beside the river, muna to, ang Villalara, katong Colorado, homes, about 4 subdivisions nga na murag yun siya na nahimo siyang usa ka swimming pool, dako kayo na dam. Gasige uguan. That was 1 o'clock. We stayed there all the way up to 4 o'clock. High tide gihapon, dili kagawas ang wa gyud mo kunhod ang tubig. Nagsige og rescue. Ang mga tao na lang dito, volunteers dito, I saw Red Cross, I saw Coast Guard, and then abot there's a team from Argao nga abot. Niagto mi sa command center nila. Ang mga tao, they were really so hard to explain, no? So hard to really describe. But grab, mura ko, even up to now, hunahuna ako na yan, magkamata ko sa gabi, muto ako luha, makakuan ko nga, grabe, ang tao, luoy, yung kaayo ba? Tungod lang ni ini, wako kibaw kinsa may atong angay pasanginlan, mura ka galagot, nga gagaul ka nga. But ako, as an official, mura ko kuan sad, I just have to assure them nga, kuan lang ta, tabangan, kuan lang ta, no? Ako lang, kutom sa mahimo, but yet, you feel that there's only so much you can do, no? So si board member Ninette went back to relay the information that we needed help there. Kay wala man, di man taka-contact, communication was down. This is the same scenario also I've seen when the linog happened. nga kita sa kog body bags there in the hospital. And I went around, grabe sa kayong devastation. So, you know, we could only say nga, laban, bangon, resiliency, but we need to have a solid and a concrete plan moving forward. Dili mahimo ning addressing typhoons, calamities like this, nga limited lang ta sa disaster preparedness, relief operations, mga encouraging messages. I'd like to paint the picture black or white gid karon nga if we don't do anything now, if we cannot get our act together, maluoy ko sa mga tao. Maluoy ko sa mga tao. And I'll do everything I can within this 3 years nga naa gihatag na mo as mandate nga maningkamot gyud ni. Nga we will really have to show something concrete. Secretary Vince, when I talked to him, ingon siya nga paningkamutan na at anuhin natin, sikapin natin na by 2026 meron nang mangyari na project, at least man lang, masimula na. And kato nakaking ko nga, well, kaning magong mag-address ka, kaning master plan, you know, a lot of people don't understand. But when you want to build a house, a strong house, a beautiful house, a well-planned house, you need a plan, a nice plan. And you cannot build first ang roof before its foundations. I've learned this when I was in the private sector and then I became part of the RDC all the way through hangtod karon. A lot of us in government don't understand the importance of this. But we have to see how other countries are doing things. And this is done by, this is already based on the JICA study, the Japanese International Cooperation Agency.
Thank you, Vice Gov. And now we will entertain questions from our friends from the media. So if you have any questions, please approach the microphone. Naka-on siya?
Hello. Okay. Vice Gov, good morning. You mentioned about sa katong mga reasons nga no na stop to, one of the reasons nga no na stop to ang drainage master plan, Gov ba, Vice Gov. Unsay mga, you said na kanang ang mga informal settlers, ang maoy one of the reasons nga no na hunong to kadiyot or na ay mga delays. So, unsay plano ana in kaso na murag mo balik na pod balik ko na pod og implement, Vice Gov ba, is there like a holistic approach in solving the informal settlers sa kaning mga master drainage plan, Vice Gov?
I did not really say nga informal settlers were one of the reasons, no. I said nga the management sa pag-implement sa project is one of the reasons why nga na-delay ni siya ang atong project, no. Yes, the informal settlers needs to be relocated. Like in the no-build zones, kinahanglan na sila nato i-relocate. But kinahanglan tagaan sa na nimo sila o kapuy-an nga dili sad sila ma-dislocate from their current nga na sila nagtrabaho, na sila nimuyo, ang ilang mga anak na nagswila des dool, di sana mahimo nimong papuyon dito sa lagyo kayo. And kaya man gyud, it can be done. Ug doon na like proper coordination between the local and the national government. When I was in the Regional Development Council, we passed a resolution that would make the funding for the relocation be part of the national expenditure. Dili na siya sa local. But of course, a local government, it is within the mandate of the mayors, the vice mayors, and the councilors to relocate them. Nahimo na ni. There are models that we can look to this. Na nahimo ni. A case in point kanang naa diha sa Mandawi, right across the regional trial court, na nasunugan na siya kanang sa Maharlika Tipolo, na may napabarog niya nga housing units. But wala na sila kabuild og balik dito sa ilahag yung mga lugar. And tanawa, nindot kayo. I'll just like to raise this, Andrea. This was a news article. 44 billion din Metro Cebu Flood Control Project funding halted. This was September 28, 2022, and you look at the background. It was still here in open light. I came here and I reported already that na-halted na ni. So dugay na kayo nato nga discussions, dugay na natong i-push. And I outlined here also the reasons why nga na-halt.
Thank you, Vice Gov. Katong sa Typhoon O1, Vice Gov, there are a lot of kanang news about Sierra Madre protecting Luzon na naka-weekend sa typhoon. So unsa lay imuhang sa ato ang mga mountains diri sa Cebu, what are your mandate for the protection of our mountains and the environment that could help us sa kaning sa pag-weekend sa typhoon, Vice Gov?
Well, there is really, in the plan, in the master plan, naagina, no? Kana siyang reforestation, kanang reclaiming of the forest covers, no? But I'll point this out, no? This is something I've learned also from our discussions with the experts, no? Sila si Dr. Danny Hake. Na what happened in Toledo, in that parts, recorded was 488 millimeter rainfall. Murag ang tubig, murag bitaw siya, gi-imagine ako, murag na ay buhawi, niya ang tubig, gidadig to sa babaw, digto gibagsak, digto sa bukid, ibabaw. And then mo to siya mo inigas padung digto sa ubos. So, iginana ang phenomenon. I don't know if the forest covers would be enough to control the water going down. So, wala may kanang fits-all formula for this, no? So, it is a combination of a lot of solutions. Wastewater, stormwater catchment, facilities, reforestation, kaning waste management, dagan.
Thank you, Vice Gov.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hello, Gov. Good morning. I-recall lang ako itong gimension mo about new build zones diri sa Cebu. Example na lang sa Mananga River. So, is it high time na to enforce na yun na dili na mo balik ang mga community na to diya sa Mananga River since na-wash out naman yun siya sa Gov. So, para at least to prevent future may tabo na po.
Dapat gudon ta. And it's just that in Mananga, in everywhere else.
So, unsay dapat buhaton sa LGU, ana?
The LGU should talk with the national government, no? And I think they are already, as we speak. There has to be a coordinated approach. Munang kanang DSUD, housing department, should be part of the committee or the group that we will organize.
And kinahanglan ba nga gwardiyahan na lang area para di na po sila makabalik kung it takes time magud Vice, no, na basing maka-build na po sila din maglisod na po tag kuan.
I think by this time, they must have realized also na delikado sa gyud kaayo ug naa sila diha. But ang ila lang gyud asam sad sila. So the asam sad sila needs to be addressed. Muto nga dunay discussions regarding the release of the ayuda when we had the briefing with the President nga i-determine, i-define usa ug asa mabalhinan before the ayuda could be released, no?
Okay, second question, Vice, no? Pagbisita ni DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon I think this week last week day, he mentioned about the dam nga dapat na yung catchment dito sa
yes.
higher areas. Do you have existing ordinance ani nga or proposal sa province na dapat nagi dam sa taas or sa may mga implications ani kung
We will look into that, no? Kay in the plan, in the master plan, there are about 9 dams nga gipropose nga i-build, starting with Danao all the way to Karkar. 9 ka dams ang naa gipropose. When I was in the Regional Development Council, gipasa ni sa DPWH to NIA, National Irrigation Authority, nga kamo na build sa dams, kaya naman may funding for that. I think there's also MCWD. You could also ask this question to MCWD. But there's a lot of ways, modalities, where we could approach in building dams. Either it's government funded or PPP or LGU funded. Now, ang limitation sa province is that we don't have jurisdiction over Cebu City, no? Lapu-Lapu City, and even Mandawi City to some extent. So kinahanglan gini siya og inter-LGU approach. But yes, in the plan, there is a need to build dams. What Mananga has currently is just a weir dam. It's not a catchment type of dam.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim Ray. Any other questions for the Vice Governor?
Good morning, Vice. Queen from ITV Cebu. Earlier, you have mentioned that the devastation happening in Cebu, with all the devastation happening in Cebu, someone who has to take accountability. So, for you, Vice, who has to take the arrow, and what is your message for them?
Well, they will have to bite the bullet. Heads has to roll. I don't know who. We're not the proper authorities to determine as to who. But actions should be done judiciously and swiftly. To me, it's part of the moving forward.
If you can share with us also, Vice, kumusta na ang investigation with the contractors sa nagkadiyang flood control projects din sa Cebu, if you can share with us?
Wala ko we're not privy to the discussion, so may appeal ganyan na. That is with the proper agencies, authorities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Queen. Any other questions? Yes, Sir Jean.
Jean Venezuela from New Star Philippines. Sir, nalang ko'y question, sir. Sa Luzon, there is this one governor who was not present during the devastation of the typhoon. And I think the local government, I mean the DILG, is questioning for his absence during the typhoon, which I think he went abroad. Then we have similar case here in Cebu, which I think everybody knows, where a group of officials went to Europe, some for a reason, said doon a seminar, and then ang uban doon ako na vacation lang, but they were given permit by the office of the governor. Sir, usay imong natandaw nga maayong pamahagi niini to correct the same mistake, and what are you doing about this issue, sir?
Well, kaning biyahe, good. It's really personal discussion, no? Not unless it's with the official purpose. And there are steps and procedures that each and every government official follow before we could leave. So I think these officials that have gone abroad follow the necessary steps and procedures for them to be able to leave. Kaya otherwise, di ka kalusot sa Bureau of Immigration. Now, as to if you will leave or not, that is your personal discretion. To me, personally, ug dunay katalagman, if I know nga dunay katalagman, di ko mubiya. Even though even if I'm Vice Governor. Because in terms of calamities, all hands on deck eh. Like, ug mag-declare og state of calamity. It's the Sanggunian that declares the state of calamity. That is my personal take. I don't know with the others. But, kada official sa gobyerno, ma-elected or not elected, undergoes a stringent process before they could leave. Especially during state of calamity. And we are still under the state of calamity. Kami mo file gid me sa online system sa DILG before to ask for a clearance. Ug dili mi palargahon sa DILG, di mi palargahon, wala gid mi, di mi kalarga.
Would you say, sir, na when they went to Europe, we are still in the state of calamity?
I think we still are. Because the state of calamity sa earthquake was still in effect. And karon doon na sa bago na state of calamity. And I think there's already a directive from the President that travel is suspended from November 9 to November 15.
Sir, what measures are you going to do about this, sir?
Wala. To me, the policy is already, in fact, it's already too much paperwork and too much bureaucracy. It becomes a personal discretion. Ug malarga ka, unya matimingan kang may bagyo, amo na bash to the teeth gyud ka. Wa gyud tay kuan ana, no? Mga tao karon are very vigilant eh. So it's really a personal discretion. So I have to know unsa may reasons nako that I have to leave. If it's kuan, it's something I could forgo, then I will. But if it's also something very important, maybe a matter of life and death, then I will leave. Diba? But ug nay calamity, the primordial importance is really ang atong duty. No?
Sir, when I arrived, you were talking about the cover of the province na kinahanglan panalipdan gyud. Di ba, sir, na wa may mugawas nga pondo kung dili moagi sa inyo, especially you as Vice Governor?
Well, there's the check and balance system of each and every local government unit. So that is still in place.
Sir, about this issue on Liluan, the devastating effect of the Typhoon Tino, where there were a lot of fatalities. Unsa inyong recent na nahimo nini, since the officers before or the elected officers were not there during the devastation?
Well, karon we could only think sa moving forward again, no? I don't want to delve too much on what has happened because, you know, magsige na lang tag blame, magsige tag finger pointing, wagi rin naman ma-accomplish niya na. I think the most paramount approach now is really for people to get back their lives the soonest time possible. When I was there last Saturday, I was there. I visited the wake atong usa ka inahan nga nawad-an og iyang anak, iyang inaamahan og kuan, missing iyang kuan. Grabe ang lapok bagyo kayo, dili pa siya kapuy-an ang mga balay, ang ubang mga balay nga wash out, way kuryente, way tubig. Imagine dunay lapok, sir. Yeah, dili ka kalimpyo because way tubig. So, kinahanglan dito engineering equipment for clearing operations because ang mga tao dili kabalik og trabaho o dili pa normal ang ilang puy-anan. In fact, when I was there, ang request nila was not even food. There's enough supply of relief items. I think it's ilang gikinahanglan ang mga folding beds because they're just still katong pamilyaha nga kung giadto wala gyud ang ilang balay wag tang gyud. So naara sila sa gawas. Napamay tulda, they just requested for folding beds. Katong emergency light kay naghaya pero way suga. So that is the situation now and I think that is still there. Now, sa Linog, hisgutan na lang nato, people are still living outside on tents. So they need mattresses, they need folding beds. Mag-December na, I think that's still gonna be the same. Kaya sige pa man uguyog. So to me, importante to get their lives back together. And kami sa provincial government will do everything, no? Nga makatabang ang board members naglihok in terms of giving relief items, checking on the ground, unsa na status, na-clear na ba ni? Or unsa pa need? Because we need to consult the local leaders, the barangay, the mayors, no? All the elected officials. No? Kasi sila man ay abtanan sa mga concerns niya. Igo ramin mo support ug unsay kikinahanglan.
Given this problem, sir, are you planning to give an authority to devise, to the governor to buy equipments for this purpose that you mentioned?
Yes, if there is a request, we will act on it. No? But so far, katulang sa declaration of the state of calamity.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sir Jean. I believe wala na tayo questions, no? And sa tayo igong oras, we'll also welcome in a bit our next set of panelists. So before the Vice Governor bids goodbye, Vice, would you also like to give your closing statement for all of our viewers watching this right now?
Well, dagang salamat kayo, Andrea. Dagang salamat kayo, Sir Eric, to Open Line again for having me here. It's an opportune but yet unfortunate time that we discuss this. We have a solution. We have a way of moving forward. And the way moving forward is to do the interventions that is laid down there is Metro Cebu Flood and Drainage Control Master Plan. Nga ko raging mensahe namo nato tanan is let us do the right projects right.
Thank you very much. Atong pakpakan si Vice Governor Glenn Anthony Soco. And ayaw mo gawa no mga kauban sa atong pagbalik, we shall welcome the Executive Director of the Soil and Water Conservation Foundation Incorporated, Mr. William Granert. And of course, our representatives from MCWD. Ato ning hisgutan ang state sa ato ang mga watersheds ug sa ato ang Central Cebu Protected Landscape ug kanisad nagpaabot mo anino nganong wa pay aga sa inyong mga panimahay after ni Bagyong Tino. So please don't go away. Open Line News Media Forum will be right back after these reminders from our partners.
Focusing on our customers' health and wellness, our highly skilled professionals provide fast, high-quality healthcare services. Here are the services offered by Kaiser Medical Center in our clinics nationwide. You with the best customer experience, Kaiser focuses on convenience and flexibility with its 24/7 online access. Kaiser Medical Center, your partner in health and wellness.
We come together to commit ourselves passionately to our 30M by 30 campaign with the aim to create 30 million financially educated families by the year 2030. Let's inspire and be inspired, learn and grow, and make a difference in the lives of many Filipino families. is committed to educating and empowering 30 million families by 2030. Join our financial literacy campaign. Makapag-ipon ng tama? Check. Makatipid? Check. Magkaroon ng tamang investments? Check. Makatulong sa kapwa? Check. Makatravel around the world ng libre? Check. Posible ang lahat ng yan sa IMG. Tuloy-tuloy lang tayo sa pagtulong at pag-abot ng ating mga pangarap. Sama-sama tayo sa 30M by 30 Agenda.
Dear Nay, Tay, kaibigan, handa ka na ba? Handa ka na ba sa mga biglang hamon ng buhay? Hamon ng buhay sa iyo at sa iyong pamilya. Alam niyo, life is full of surprises. Kailangan maging matalino, wais at madiskarte tayo sa buhay. Lalo na kung ang pamilya natin ang nakasalalay sa lahat ng mga bagay na ating ginagawa. Nay, Tay, kaibigan, ang Manila Bankers Assurance ay tutulong sa iyo para ikaw ay laging handa sa lahat ng hamon sa buhay. In all of life's uncertainties, ika nga. Kaya naman, why don't you show your love by protecting your family today? Narito kami para sa iyo. Gagabayan ka namin. Laging handang magbigay ng aming pagmamahal. This is our love letter to you. Nagmamahal, Manila Bankers Assurance.
Focusing on our customers' health and wellness, our highly skilled professionals provide fast, high-quality healthcare services. Here are the services offered by Kaiser Medical Center in our clinics nationwide. To provide you with the best customer experience, Kaiser focuses on convenience and flexibility with its 24/7 online access. Kaiser Medical Center, your partner in health and wellness.
We come together to commit ourselves passionately to our 30M by 30 campaign with the aim to create 30 million financially educated families by the year 2030. Let's inspire and be inspired, learn and grow, and make a difference in the lives of many Filipino families. Is committed to educating and empowering 30 million families by 2030. Join our financial literacy campaign.
News Media Forum, padayon ta sa ato ang diskusyon karong buntaga mga higala no mga kauban. Ug karon, let's talk about the current state of our Central Cebu Protected Landscape or kining gitawag nga CCPL. We are also honored to have with us this morning the Executive Director of the Soil and Water Conservation Foundation Incorporated, Mr. William Granert. Ugay mong kabalaka kasabot sa gitsag Bisaya mga kauban. Thank you so much for joining us in the show, Sir William. Maayong buntag.
Maayong buntag, Sag.
Sir William, this is also a very important discussion because we want to know what went wrong. These areas nga gibahaan, Sir William, these are places nga wala gyud ta nakasinati og baha.
ever since, or maybe kung nahitabo man gani, dili ingon ani ka grabe. So, unsa man ang atoang mga sayop? What were the faults that we committed to the environment? And what is the current ecological state of our vital watersheds here in Cebu?
Okay, there's no one answer to all of this. There's many answers. There are many answers that you have as to what went wrong. This is a problem that has been over 50 years in developing. One of the things, let me give you an idea about Cebu is one of the most deforested provinces in the country. And it started with when the Spanish came, the galleon trade took out your big Malawi trees along the coast. Then the Americans came in and shipped a lot of the material to Japan and the United States. Then the Japanese came in and shipped some more out. And then the Filipinos themselves have been cutting down the forests for a long, long time. The problem, though, there's a very interesting report from the Bureau of Soils from 1953. Wow. And I ran across it accidentally. And it said at that time, Cebu Island had lost 700 million cubic meters of soil. It was now in the ocean. And the interesting part about this is that's 10 centimeters over the entire island was gone. And the funny part about it is they said now the Cebuanos are moving to Mindanao and doing the same thing down there with the thing. Now, whether that's true or not, you'll have to go ask the people in Mindanao. But the thing is that the land use here over the years has been to, well, let's say if I improve the land, I cut down the forest and I make an agricultural part of the land. Or I clear it for a village, a barangay center, or lately what it's been doing is clearing for businesses, for subdivisions. Mm-hmm. And what you have now is essentially a deforested area. And you'll notice the comment before, if we have a storm like Tino, it dumps that amount of water on, perhaps the forest would not be able to hold it, but it would slow it down. Yes. But if you have nothing, it goes right down the hillside, and of course it did. Some of you may remember in 1983, the Mananga River flooded. That's when the bridge was knocked out. And so this was even worse because now you have all of the villages built along the river. They had from what I understand, they had a retaining wall. However, because of whatever engineering they did, it was not high enough, and the water simply went over. In other words, you had too much water going down the hill. But the important thing to remember here is, where does your problem start? It starts at the top of the mountain. That's where the rain hits. And it gets worse and worse as you go down. So you can do a whole lot of infrastructure for flood control down at the lower level, but if you don't address where the water is coming from, you're still going to get flooded. And it's going to cost you more and more in terms of money to repair the damage that you have for the...
So, sir, the data that you shared with us was 1953. Today is already 2025. What is the statistics of the current state of deforestation and land use in Cebu?
Well, let me take, I think we're about, let's say last time I heard maybe 3%, 4% forest. It depends upon what you count as a forest, because there's a lot of artificial forests that we have which have the wrong species in it in the first place. So if you count that, you might get up to 5%. We've been working in Central Cebu Protected Landscape for, well, my wife was a member of the board, the Protected Area Management Board, since it was formed in 2008. We have about 200 hectares out of the total area that is actually good forest. And so essentially there is no forest there, and a lot of it has been removed. There are a number of reasons for this. One is that I don't know if people realize it, that they used to have a rule 18% slopes and above were supposed to be forest. That's the national rule. Cebu is exempt. Well, the politicians made it exempt because Cebu is essentially one big real estate deal. So if you have no law that says above 18% you're not supposed to be building, then you remove it.
I'll just interject.
Yeah.
Just for the purposes of the audience. So what do you mean? What is the 18%?
18% is the national land use classification that said above that is supposed to be forest land. And the reason for that is the steepness of the slope. So when you remove that, you open up to everything, and which is what's happened now. If you look at where the roads are going, if you look at the destruction of the land itself, if you look at the number of people that have moved up into the uplands. One of the things, of course, one of your major reasons was World War II, when people evacuated into the hinterlands to stay away from the Japanese, which were in Cebu City. They stayed, and they raised their families there. So one of the major problems is people forget who is the de facto resource manager. And here we're talking about resources manager, natural resources within the watershed. A good friend of mine once said we could put a whole army around the Central Cebu Protected Landscape and we still wouldn't stop the destructions from it. Because the de facto resource manager is that person on the hillside who has a bolo in his hand who will decide whether the tree is cut down or not. That's the resource manager. So a lot of education has to go into teaching that person to make more ethical decisions about the natural resources. One of the problems that we have with the protected landscape is that you have all of the barangay captains as members of the Protected Area Management Board. Okay, so I think it's somewhere around 70 total. What is their primary reason? Economic development for their constituents within the barangay. It's not environment. So if you look at only the economic return first, then you do things which are, one of the things, sand and gravel extraction. How much can I sell it for? Cebuanos are famous for their lechon manok and lechon, and then you need charcoal for that. Where does the charcoal come from? The hardest trees in the watersheds. So they cut down the trees for charcoal because they can sell it down here in the city, and everybody's happy because they can have lechon. So it's a vicious cycle, really, with the thing. I like lechon too, so don't get me wrong here. That's one. That's the little destruction that takes place. And then you have the roads going in the wrong places. Remember, the moment you put a road into an area, you can kiss the area goodbye because people will follow the road. And then you end up with communities. I think if you look at the Trans-Central Highway, look at the development along the Trans-Central Highway. You have stores, you have houses, you have resorts, all because the road went in there. Now, whether the road has the best route, I don't know. I know how it was made, but I won't mention it. So, yeah, so anyway, this is one of the things. So people have an effect on the watershed itself. And if you have the wrong decision, in other words, you have a decision that's not based, it's based only on your own perception of what you get. If clearing the land is a positive thing, and getting rid of the forest is a positive thing, you'll never have a forest. And that's what's happening there.
Sir, so Vice Governor earlier shared his proposed solutions moving forward from this catastrophe. How about you on your end? What are the lessons that we can take moving forward, and what can we do to further prevent our protected landscape and watershed from further degradation?
Okay. Well, one thing, our foundation does not use the term reforestation anymore because it has a negative connotation. If you look at the statistics from what I understand, the Philippines, 30 million plus hectares, has been reforested at least 2.5 times, the entire country, if you look at the cost that's been put into reforestation. Reforestation usually means a monoculture, and most of you are familiar. If you look at Bohisan, you have monocultures of mahogany, teak, gemelina, and even ipo-ipo in some cases. That's not how Mother Nature builds a forest. So we like to use the term forest restoration, because the forest is more than the trees. It's everything that goes into it. The biodiversity, the cooling effect on the climate, the absorption effect when you have heavy rains up to a certain point, and the release of the water, groundwater, that you have down below where you have your tubod, where the people get their springs, or you have piping that's come in there, or like at the weir system in Haklupan, where we're collecting it and bringing it to TISA and then distributing it. It's a natural cycle that happens, and then we get more rain, and then the water goes down. But one of the most interesting things about Cebu is that it is a karst landscape. Now everybody says, what's karst? Karst is the international term for limestone. You're familiar with the term anapog. Yeah, everybody understands what anapog is. That's the softest limestone. You use it for filling material. It makes good roads and whatnot. Okay. It is one of the most sensitive ecosystems in the world because you have a ecosystem above, sa ibabaw, and then you have an ecosystem below in your cave systems where your fresh water is, which eventually it's the purest water in the world. The Earth, if you take a look at the total area of the Earth, about 10%, maybe 12% is karst. Yet 40% of the population of the world lives on or near it because of the freshwater value that you get from it. So if you're able to protect the karst landscape, then you have your drinking water, your irrigation water, whatever you need it for with the thing. But engineers generally are not trained in karst engineering. It's only a very little bit of a 5-year course in civil engineering. You might have one class if you take geology, or you might have one section of one class that deals with engineering on karst, and it is so delicate. Let me give you an example. When we were up in before in 2018, we were after they had the big slide in Naga. We asked the people it was Uling National High School, and they were sitting there and they were saying, well, we have problems because the water is going under our new building. It broke under the old building, tore down the retaining wall, went down, and now it was in the new high school building, which they had to condemn, and it was working on the new elementary school down below that thing. The problem with karst is that it is porous. What you put on the surface eventually ends up underneath. So if you have your septic tank that goes underground and then comes out on the surface, it eventually go down. Your household chemicals, you dump them out on the ground, it goes down eventually into your water systems. anytime you have any basura. Now, one of the problems in Cebu province is, where do you throw the basura? You have landfills, many of which are not lined. In other words, they're open in the surface. The water leaches through and goes into the groundwater, and then you wonder why you're contaminated. We had this problem in Cerro Leones, where we have a little farm. In Barangay Nanud, they had a cemetery, and they buried the people in wooden caskets. There was no crypt per se. They put it in, they had the little apartments. Well, they leaked. And they leaked down into the water system that got into the barangay down below. And then they had, I think they had dysentery, I think it was typhoid, but they had an epidemic, and they finally discovered that the source of the pollution was the cemetery up on top of the mountain. The water had come down, so they closed the cemetery. Now they don't have the problems with the contamination with the thing. So very, very delicate, and people don't understand this. So you're looking at Barangay Sinsin and Sudlan, where they grow the vegetables. And if you've ever been up there, they have what they call sinkholes. The DNR did a study, Cebu, and they have a book that has the sinkholes of Cebu City. Now that's everything, that's all, the entire area. There are over 700 sinkholes. And these sinkholes are where the water goes. Some of them are very...
Just to clarify,
Yeah, sure.
700 sinkholes in the entire Cebu City?
Yeah, that's the rural area plus the urban area. So, okay, so that's about, well, I think Cebu is 30,000 hectares, I think, with this. So what happens, what you put in this, if you're spraying for vegetables and you have a sinkhole nearby and you get a rainstorm, then the water goes down into the drinking water and eventually works its way down. Unfortunately, what happens is it goes to Bunbun. Now, it's diluted along the way. Don't let me give you the impression that you're drinking pesticides in your water. But it is contaminated because you can ask MCWD. They clean for bacteria. They clean for bacteria, but it's a very expensive process to remove any pesticides that they may have. So they'll have to tell you about the technical part of whether they do that, or if it's on a regular basis, or whether only as needed with the thing. So the thing is that if we're going to solve the problem, you're going to have to start at the top of the mountain. You're going to have to, in some cases, remove the people that are on the slopes where they're too steep, and you have to put the forest back again so that it serves its purpose. You can build gabion dams, which are flow-through dams. That's a community-built dam. It can be maintained by the community. One of the other things, my wife they talked to, it's been several years. The people down here, when I say people down here in the lowlands, should be paying for the protection of the watershed because that's where their water is coming from, in the upper part. And we had proposed at one time that you add a peso per cubic meter. And that peso per cubic meter goes into a trust fund to actually, if some of you are familiar with the Caminero system of roads, where you hire a family or a group to maintain a given length of road, and you pay them an honorarium, if you want to call it that, or a stipend per month, so that after every rain, they're out there fixing the holes. If it's not raining, there's not so much work. Do the same thing where you cannot move the person off the land, but maybe that person or family or group could be responsible for 10 hectares or 20 hectares. You pay them a monthly stipend. But the ones who should pay it are the ones down here receiving the water that they're supposed to protect. It's not, they shouldn't be doing this for free. They should be paid for protecting the source of the water in the first place, so that when it gets down here, you actually have the lower population paying for the protection of the watershed. Because, I'm sorry, DNR cannot do it. They had, last time I heard, 5 or 6 forest guards for the total area that you deal with the thing. So I think it's 28,000 hectares. So you can't do it. You can't protect it with 4 people or 5 people with the thing. You have to have the local community involved in it. And they have to have a reason for wanting to do it. Okay, one last thing before we go. We're talking about limestone. This we distributed, we had a project when Governor DeViti, this is 2018. It's a kit that it's basic limestone knowledge. In other words, what it is, how you do it. We have fact sheets. It's not a book, so you can take out individual fact sheets. One of my favorite ones is the last one here, and I'll let you read this one. This is the Visayan terminology for limestone. So if you look at it, you want to read some of the names in there, the terms with the thing?
Oh, this one, anapog or limestone. It's also called giso. Giso din sa Bisaya, anapog or giso. Basyaw, cave formation, basin inside a cave. Batong bantilis, a metamorphosed limestone. It's a term used in Karkar, Cebu. Batong buhi, metamorphosed limestone gihapon. Term used throughout Cebu. Kanang ilang yung nga buhi ang bato.
Yeah. So my favorite is the one from Car. They call it Blue Seal. For those older people here, the Blue Seal used to be the smuggled cigarettes from the United States that came in here. But anyway, Blue Seal here is a very dense clay layer that if you drill into it, there's no water. It's closed off. In other words, you can have what they call a dry well. So even if you're a good limestone area, you hit this clay layer, you won't get anything. Above it and below it, maybe. But if you are in the layer itself, so they call it Blue Seal. And the clay is actually blue in color. Yeah, so anyway, these Visayan terms that we've gathered over the years from talking to the local people. So some of your family names are actually karst descriptions.
I just have one question, Sir William. You were talking about the 1950s, and then you've been here in Cebu for quite a while, and you could probably draw a graph from a very optimistic point of view to where does this graph go? Is it going, are we getting any better, or is it descending, if that would be the right word for it?
Right now, I'm more pessimistic than I am optimistic. And the reason for this is that why would it take a natural disaster like a typhoon, the one we just went through, to get people to wake up and say, oh, now we should be doing something? We've been talking about this for 30 years, about limestone management with the thing. And it's unfortunately, we run into a problem because if you're going to deal with watershed management, you're talking 20 to 30 years to really establish a good program. What is the political time frame here? 3 years. And then you have an election. Whereas the senators are what, 6 years? Yes. Okay, so, but everybody else is 3 years. So if you only have a 3-year time period, you want to do as much as you can, and then if you're antagonistic to the one who wins the next election, if it's not you, then you kill all of their programs and start over again with a thing. You can't do that with watershed management. Watershed management is a continuous process because it does not recognize, it's like the river, it does not recognize political boundaries. It goes where it wants to with the thing, usually the lowest part of the thing. So we, as the vice mayor or vice governor said, we have to stop and put politics aside if we're really going to solve the problems now, because the intensification with climate change, Tino was just an example of it. I read yesterday they're expecting 3 to 4 more typhoons before the end of the year. Now, if you took another storm like Tino and put it over the same area, then what? It's more water coming down the hill, even worse. And then if you compound it because of the earthquake, because the limestone is cracked anyways. One thing to remember with limestone, and all of you live on limestone, I would bet, is that limestone moves. In other words, it's a characteristic of the rock itself. It slides. And you can see that with all the little slides that we've had. It doesn't have to be a big one. And so if you do that, you have to be very careful about how you engineer on it, what you grow on it, what you put on it, or what you throw away on it, the thing. So again, it's not going to be one solution that you have. It's going to be many little solutions. And it's important that we talk to the local residents about what can they do on an individual basis, what can they do on a situ basis, and what can they do on a barangay basis. And then it's up to the municipal officials to put all of that together to make up the plan that we're talking about. Engineer Harkey, that I've known him for years. He's a very qualified person with the thing. So he knows what he's talking about too. So if he's working on this, then I have confidence that the plan eventually will work. But it's a plan. The problem is the implementation. How are you going to do it and get the right people to do it that have enough guts to say, you're not doing it correctly? Or like I say, there have to be sanctions. If you're not doing it correctly, it's not the person that's the engineer and whatnot that's going to be the recipient of the mistakes. It's going to be the local people. So we have to go down to that with the thing.
Thank you very much, Sir William. We really learned a lot from you, and hopefully this will not be the last of your guesting here with us at Open Line News Media Forum.
And please stay. There will be other questions coming up.
From our friends from the media.
Yeah, we're going to introduce now the other members of our panel. We have to my immediate right, si Ma'am Minerva Herodias, Public Information Division Manager, Spokesperson, MCWD. And to the farthest right is Engineer Arvin Halagwe. Haluwagi, okay. Lisod na ng in-English. Balhin nagbili siya. No? Okay, tama in-English ang gawas. Oh, and then, he's the Production Division Manager, MCWD, SAD.
Good morning sa ato ang mga kauban gikan sa MCWD and welcome back. Salamat kaayo sa pagbalik-balik no dinhi sa Open Line News Media Forum. So aron nang masabtan sa kadaghanan, Ma Minerva, Engineer Arvin no. Although we know that a lot of people had it worst during the typhoon, but di man sad gyud nato ma-invalidate ang sentiment sa mga tawo nga nangita sad gyud sa ilang aga sa tubig. So what happened? Nganong na-disrupt man ang ato ang supply after ni Typhoon Tino?
Good morning sa tanan nga nagtan-aw ni ini nga programa karon. First good ang nahitabo namo. First of all, daghan ko nakita nga comments nga unlike kuno sa Odette, nga mas kusog, mas grabe ang hangin, mas grabe daw karon ang yes, because ang amo ang kinadakan nga problema karon is na guba ang amo ang usa sa mga major water source, which is ang Haklupan facility na 25,000 cubic meters up to 30 pagani kung i-maximize nato ang iyang production. So unlike sa Odette, wala ni naguba, wala na putol ang tubo namo before. Karon dako kaayo ang among gi-repair, kay taas kaayo ang naputol. This is an 800 millimeter diameter nga pipeline. Mao ni siya nagdala sa raw water from our facility in Haklupan to our reservoir in Lagtang and in Tisa. So dako kay siya, nahunlak siya, kay nakabkab ang nag-support no nga bed kana ganing yuta So nabanla sa baha ang yuta. So naghanging na lang ang tubo, which is puno sa tiyag tubig, ang pwedeng bugata, na naputol. So it took us, pila na ka-days, Sir John? Mga 1 week na nga ma-repair. Kay taas gyud guys siya. Dili siya ma-welding lang one time. In fact, gitabangan namin sa Karkar City Water District para lang ma-repair ni siya nga segment sa amo ang facility diha sa Haklupan. Another problem is ang among major water source in Lusaran, grabe sad ang ilahang nahiaguman sa bagyo, naguba gyud ang ilang planta. They need extensive nga cleaning and rehabilitation. The problem with Lusaran now is wala pa sila power supply. Kay di man sila maadto sa VECO, kay ang access to the plant, which is katong bridge, nahugno man sad. So mo na siya, ngano nga, inana gyud ka grabe ang disruption sa services kung i-compare nimo sa mga previous nga bagyo nga niagi nato.
If atong ma-compare with statistics, Ma'am Minerva, no, ato ang kani adto previously on a normal day, unsa ato ang water supply generally in total sa inyong mga franchise area versus karon, unsa ang iyang statistics sa pag-drop?
Ang buntag, ma'am. On the onset sa bagyo, ma'am, pagkahuman gyud, naka-recover din may up to 30%. Ang nakanindot lang ato, although dili man ta ingon nga ingon nindot, ma'am, no, ang naka-advantage sa audit is that maka-function ang mga gensets namo. So hasta sad sa among bulk supplier, karon ma'am, dili maka-function most sa gensets kay ang genset mismo na submerged sa tubig. So they have to rehabilitate, they have to dry it up, then to check the electrical systems. Then sa amo pod, ma'am, katong sakto to gingon ni Ma'am ni Narva, ang amo ang problema gyud, ma'am, is ang amo ang tubo naputol. Then tulo gyud na siya ka lengths ang naputol, ma'am. Karon nag-recover mi, nagsigimi og repairon sa Haklupan. Ang Lusaran pod naputlan pod sila og tubo kay tungod sa kakusog sa tubig. So dili lang kay ang VECO ang ang power ang problem, karon ang amo pod nga mga infrastructures na igo sad gyud. So mostly, ma'am, if you can makita nato nga ang most gyud nga na-affected is ang among surface water sources. Kasagaran, ma'am, Haklupan is surface water, ang Lusaran surface water, Buhisan surface water, and Compostela, which is sa amuan ng bulk supplier, affected sad sila, na-submerge ilang mga controls. So mostly, ma'am, mao gyud na siya ang na-affected na mo. Dako gyud siyang percentage sa amo ang nawala, ma'am. So karon, as of this moment, nag 75% na ta, ma'am, ang ato ang nahatag, pero mao lagi, ma'am, dako pa gyud ang kulang. So 25% is dako gyud na siya pod.
Unsa inyong hang gipaninguhaan nga timeline nga maayo ni atong mga tubo, engineer, ang katong mga genset nga na-submerge, ang rehabilitation sa Lusaran aron na atay panglantawan nga goal moving forward?
Yes. Ma'am, amo yun ang gisuwat dire kay kabaw jud mi mangutana gid ang mga tao. Kanang dili gid ni siya in an instant maayo kay dako-dako nga trabahoon. Pero ang Haklupan, ma'am, o later on basin makahatag si Ma'am Minerva ninyo og mga video o pictures, hopefully, ma'am, human may this week. Then ang nakanindot lang pod sa Haklupan kay although wala pa ang VECO or target sa VECO karon, makadagan rata kay naatay genset sa ato ang mga bomba dito. So ang maunay target sa Haklupan this week. Ang Lusaran, ma'am, is nag-agad jud mi sa VECO, ma'am, nga ma-restore ang power nila sa Lusaran. Then niingon ang among supplier nga 7 days after ma-restore ang VECO, makapadagan na sila. Ang sa Buhisan is which is dako naputol pod ang among tubo didto. This week pod ang among target. So mao to ma'am, nalipay mi nga naagi ni assist namo ma'am no, mga water districts nga nitabang namo, most especially sa Bogo City, ang sa Karkar nagpadala gyud sila og mga personnel, nagpadala sila og equipments nga motabang sa moang kuan ma'am. Then also sa tanan pod nga wa na ko ma-mention ma'am no, na mangayo na umukuha na lang sad pod ko magpasalamat ma'am nga nitabang gyud sa amo ma'am ang kuan, ni cooperate gyud ma'am, tinabangay gyud mi.
In terms of budget, Engineer and Ma'am Minerva, kung ang mga LGUs maka-declare sila og state of calamity para magamit ang mga funds, no? Si MCWD, naba mo yung contingency budget para pag-ayo ani, asa man ta makakuha kwarta, di basig ang konsumidor, mahadlok sad sila nga basig ihapak sa ilang mga water bills ang inyong gamiton para pag-ayo aning mga naguba nga facilities.
Okay. First of all, we would like to assure our consumers nga they will only pay for the water that they consume. So dili na mo i-charge nila ang amuang magasto sa among rehabilitation. And unfortunately, dili sad me makakuha og budget or funding from the local or national government. We are a self-sustaining kumpanya. So that's why katong among explained when we announced nga kinahanglan mi mag-rate adjustment, kay kami raman magtuyok-tuyok raman na ang among funds. For this, na naman dyan na siya murag contingency nga budget ang MC. So, dili gid mi moingon nga dili na namo i-repair ka wa na mi kwarta. Maning kamot gyud ang MC nga makakuha mi og funds nga maggamit namo diha. And also kanilang sad, ang advantage ng sad nga na himot nga kanang pwede mi maka-emergency purchase. Dili mi kinahanglan mo go through the very long process of kanaganing government procurement. Oo. So mo na advantage diha nga na-declare ta under state of calamity. Pero ang funds is solely from MCWD nga kanang amo ang panudlanan. Dili na siya i-charge sa mga tao. Ang inyo lang unyang role is bayad lang sa mo sa inyong bill in ma-normalize na nato. For now, nag-suspend mi sa mga disconnection kay naay mga in consideration lang sad sa mga na apektuhan gyud labi na katong mga gipang baha na gani ka putlan pa kag tubig ana gani. So for now nag-suspend mi ana. We will just announce ano sa ma-resume basta mo lang na among assurance nga dili mo saka ang inyong bill tungod kay naguba ang facility sa MC.
Ma'am, usaragay ako pangutana, ma'am. Tapos either one, si engineer or ikaw makatubag. Ningon ko si Sir William Binhi nga ipapangutana sa MCWD kay ang inyong sistema makapugong sa microbes pero basic sa pesticide apil ba?
Ang among kuan sir, chlorine, and also nami ion exchange, pag-treat sa nitrate, more or less sir, sa ako lang, dili manggugo sa laboratory sir, sa amo lang kuan is, mauna siya, sa Guadalupe manggod sir is, nagkuan mi, nag-ion exchange mi. So, mauna ang among mga processes sa pag-kuan sa tubig.
Ang MCWD laboratory bago lang na ISO accredited. So ni samot siya ka strict ang amo ang standard when it comes to kanang testing sa water quality. So kana siya nga mga component naman may daily testing sa amo ang among laboratory mag-conduct siya daily testing. So we make sure nga ang amo ang quality of water nga gihatag sa mga tao passes the Philippine standard for drinking water.
Ano yung gibuhat sa katong inyong mga service areas, ma'am, nga di pa gyud ma-supply ng tubig, nagpadala mo mga tangke?
Mostly ma'am, ang wa nakatubig jud ron is the elevated areas sa among franchise. Labi na jud ang katong mountain barangays nga nasupplyan na namo bag-o kay tungod aning GA Hydro nga amo ang lusaran nga bulk supplier. yes ma'am, nag-provide mi og water trucks na hatag nagkuan mi niya natabangan pod mi sa Bogo City na pod sila ilaha. Pero sa kadako sa service area namo, gibahin-bahin lang gyud namo ma'am. Dili pod mi makaingon nga nahatagan ang nasuplayan tanan kada adlaw, pero amo na siyang girasyon ma'am ang mga water trucks. Then nagpasalamat pod mi ma'am sa Cebu City government pod ug tanan nga mga munisipyo og kanang cities ni access po sila ma'am nasad sila niya mo coordinate sila namo ma'am ug asa pwede makakuha og kanang tubig sa among mga hydrants adto sa area nga naka-recover na ang tubig. Naamang gud sa tay mga pumps nga direct ang pag-supply nato, so meaning nag-under ana nga bomba makatubig na diha nga area. Then amo nang gibutang nag-assign mi og hydrants nga metered pod ma'am kay makuan man pod sa among non-revenue water, so gi-monitor man mi. Katong mga water hydrants amo yung ang mga water trucks gi-encourage gid namo nga adto gid kung pwede adto mukuha sa hydrant nga naay meter nya mo coordinate gid sa amo kay naman may representative sa City Hall na may personnel namo dito makahatag siya sa location sa mga hydrants. Tabang na lang pod namo mamba nga among ma-monitor ang mga withdrawals sa amo ang tubig.
Last question from me. Because atong priority now is the repair of the facilities nga nangaguba, ato sa banggi panglantawan nga doon na say delay sa ato ang developing paunta nga mga water sources. Like for example, katong mga diesel nga plants, madugay-dugay, banig samot, kay marag ma-shelve siya, kay atong priority ang pag-repair sa current sources?
Di sa daykadnay ma'am nga amo pong bulk water suppliers kaning mga diesel na mo affected sa gid sila ma'am. Pero nakabalik na hinay-hinay ang ato ang diesel like sa ato ang PWRI Upaw, ato ang dito sa open ma'am nakabalik na sila kay ang MECO paspas pod nakakuan pod sila dito. Nakabalik na sila. Then ang katong mga developments ma'am and nagsigi pa man sad sila og kuan ma'am nahuman naman gyud ni ang mga diesel namo ang katulang mga wala pa kasugod kay bag-o pa na pirmahan ang kontrata or ano mao na moy wala pa pero anyway ma'am padong gihapon na sila makahuman ma'am.
Yes sir. I would like to congratulate MCWD's field people that are repairing all this. I've been in floods before. It's not the water, it's the mud that's left behind afterwards that does more damage than you think. So, congratulations to the workers in the field, because I can imagine the job that they have going through all of this with the thing.
Thank you, sir. And in fact, some of them are also badly affected by the tragedy, no? So, bisan pa man sa nahitabo kanila padayon gyapon sa pagtrabaho, no? Salamat kaayo sa atong mga kauban sa MCWD. And now, for those who have questions for MCWD, the floor is now open. Anybody? Or, of course, for Sir William.
Good morning, panelists. So for Sir William, Sir, thank you, by the way. You had a very insightful talk for us. I want to get your insights about the Monterrasas de Cebu project. I don't know if you're aware, but it's this 200-hectare development in the hills spanning Barangay Guadalupe, Sapangdako, Buhisan, and Tisa. And you mentioned a lot about our mountains and our hills here in Cebu being in Bisaya, gipahak na namo ang amo ang mga bukid diri. So, what's your thoughts about that, sir? And especially right now that there's an ongoing investigation from LGUs and key agencies, what would be your advice to the government in terms of the investigation, sir?
Okay, I haven't seen I've seen pictures of the I won't call it a problem, but I've seen pictures of what they've done there. One of the basic rules when you're dealing with limestone is you don't cut the side of the mountain. You can take off the top carefully, level it, but then you have to take all of that material away manually. You can't dump it over the side because that floods the lowland with a lot of material. I would go back and see whether who did the environmental impact assessment first, and then who issued the permit to build in the first place. And that's where you have to start, find out whether they complied with everything. It's hard after the fact to go in there and just look at it with a thing. You have to go back to the beginning and find out. Generally, as I say, a lot of the subdivisions that they have here have construction that in the long run is going to be a detriment. And then, of course, if you build any kind of a subdivision, as the vice governor said, you have to look at where the water runoff. Remember, you're waterproofing the area. Before, the water some of it used to go down into the ground because of the limestone situation. But if you waterproof it, either with roofs or streets or whatever you have with the thing, then you better be very careful about what happens when you have a major storm. Now, you have to look at the average rainfall. You can't look at a storm like Tino came in here. That's a once in a maybe 50-year rain that hopefully that won't happen again with the thing. But all this engineering has to be done very carefully beforehand. One of the things with, and I talked briefly with the vice governor, we recommended to Governor Davidi that the province purchase 2 ground penetrating radar units, because if you're building on limestone, you have to go down 30 meters to find out what's underneath. Because if you put a big heavy building on it, you may find after 5 years your walls are cracking and whatnot because there's a cave underneath. It's not a soil sample. It's actually, if you don't have ground penetrating radar, you should be drilling a borehole every meter, just to see what's underneath and whether you have voids or not, or you have a very soft limestone layer that will dissolve very quickly. It's a different kind of engineering that you have. So I think if go back to the beginning, re-examine what they had in the beginning as far as their permits and whatnot, and then find out whether there are any violations. If there are none, fine. If there are, then they have to answer for it.
Sir, since the damage is already in your expert opinion, is this project redeemable? Should it continue to operate or continue the project, or we should stop na because, like you said, nasa side ang pagpahak sa bukid, so it's not good.
Well, I can't tell you whether to stop it. I'm not the engineering, but I'm the engineer or the agency that's going to look at it with the thing. But it should be looked at, and then a decision based on technical attributes of the project itself, not necessarily the social value or whether it's damaged stuff down below. The damage has already been done, but now it's to go back and find out how do you prevent that in the future, either with this subdivision or this structure or structures nearby, so that they can prevent the damage that's down below. Because it's the poor people living down below that are the recipients of the stormwater that came off of the structure.
Last question for me, sir. Tungod here in Cebu, there's so many people living here. So my question is, like, with the rapid demand of modernization and urbanization, right now, are we able to cohabitate and live together with Mother Nature, or one must sacrifice from the other, sir?
Well, I don't think Mother Nature is going to sacrifice. I think she's going to revolt if you do something wrong and whatnot. You'll find out, just like in Tino, you didn't have the winds, but you had the rain this time. In Odette, the opposite was what happened. You have to strike a balance. There have to be some areas in which you say absolutely no building, no people, because the importance of that area is for the whole community, not simply for the real estate developer that wants to go in there and build something on it with a thing. So it's a give and take, but you remember that Cebu doesn't have a lot of room for more people to move in. You're not going to move horizontally, you're going to go vertically. That's why you have all these condominiums that are coming up and whatnot, because there's I was told many years ago that the dream of every Filipino family is to have a house and a lot and a little garden and whatnot, if that's the case. That's not the case anymore. You have too many people here, and too many people are moving in because of the economic, they think there's an economic advantage to it, I think.
Good morning to the panel. Gian Navarro from CCTN 47. Muna ko sa MCWD. Ganyan na report nga ana na sa 75% ang restoration progress. Asa naman na ron ang naibilin nga 25% sa ato ang padayon nga pag-restore. Siguro aside sa dako nga bulk water supply sa lusaran ug sa haklopan nga grabe nga apektado.
Good morning. Sir, dako na gyud tag na recover sa katang mga groundwater nato nga mga bomba. Na-restore na pod sa VECO mostly sa among mga pumps. Yes, but sir, dako jud kay ni good ang mga surface water mo ni naka-comprise sa 25% nga wala pa namo ma-recover, sir. Hopefully, kung makabalik na ang among mga tubo, sir, ma-repair na, makabalik yun ang haklopan, dako-dako pod nga percent. Lusaran, dako-dako pod nga percent. Ang Compostela, dako-dako pod. So, mauna siya, sir, ang sitwasyon. Yes, sir.
But despite from that, wala ba totally naapektuhan ang mismong supply sa tubig? Despite sa kung sabay mga natala nga mga damages o sa kakusugod sa bahang nga may nakapaguba sa maong mga pasilidad.
Napiktahan ang tubig sa unsa man nga pamaagi, sir, ang amo ang supply.
Yes, water
napiktahan gyud, sir. Dako gyud ng 25%. Yes, more or less mga estimated lang, sir, ha. That is 70,000 cubic meters per day nga nawa namo tungod sa among surface water sources. So if rough ragyod nga estimation, sir, ang 70,000 usa ka household 1 cubic meter baya, sir. So dako gyud ta, daghan-daghan ang napiktuhan. So hopefully, sir, maayo na siya para usually ang kanimang yung haklopan nato, sir, nag-supply gyud ni sa south. Major gyud ni siya nga supply namo sa south. So if you will notice, most of the complaints gikan gyud sa Talisay, gikan sa kanang Labangon, Pardo, sir, mao man gud ni siya ang ato ang supply. So mao na siya, sir, ang ato ang tubag nako sa question nga napiktahan ba ang supply. Piktahan gyud, sir, dako gyud.
For sure, daghang mga kabalayan usab ang hangtod karon wa pay agas sa tubig. Are we also considering usab nga siguro maghatod og rasyon sa tubig aron makaligo ang mga residente, makalaba o makapadayon sa ilang mga inadlong kinabuhi human sa bagyo?
Tungod sa kadako sa affected area, sir, ni coordinate lang gyud mi sa local nga mga government units, most especially barangays, sir. So mao nang amo gihatag gipadala namo ang mga water trucks sa barangay, transfer na sa lain nga barangay, kay ang most mangyud nga nakahibalo kinsa gyud to ang na-affected is ang barangay gyud, sir. So mao na ang among gi-coordinate karon ang barangay, sir. Then naagi assign nga person nga kinsa toy mukuan sa ato ang mga water trucks. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I will go to Mr. William, and since the onslaught of Typhoon Tino, resonates the call of the Filipino to make those who are responsible for faulty flood control projects to make them liable? What can you say about this ongoing investigation of government about the faulty flood control projects, sir?
Well, it's about time it happened with the thing, but you can't blame it all on the flood control. It's the policies which allow the building next to the rivers. Remember, in a forested area, the exclusion zone off a river is 40 meters. In an agricultural area, it's 20 meters. In the city, it's 3 meters. But how many pay attention to that with the thing? I think, what is it, Del Rio, when the water went through Del Rio? Del Rio, if I'm thinking of the same division, actually built in the river. So there's an old adage in the United States, if you live on a floodplain, you should expect to be flooded. And a lot of the areas here where people are living are on the natural areas that a river has to spread out the water down below and before it goes into the ocean. But if you block that off or channelize it, and then your channelization is a process where the wall is not high enough, then it floods. And if you have houses on it, whether it's informal settlers or whether it's a housing development of some kind or it's a condominium or whatnot, you should expect problems. So you better take a look at that. If you're going to live there, make sure that you understand what the ramifications are. If you have a once in a, let's say a 50-year storm like we had now, hopefully we won't have another one, but it's going to happen again because now the ground is saturated and everything is full. If one of the 3 storms that's predicted to come dumps any kind of rain on it, you're going to have flooding again coming down. So unfortunately for those people who have been displaced or whatnot or cannot get out of the way, they're going to have the same type of problem that they have with the thing. So again, don't blame everything on just the flood control. It's the policies and the uplands by allowing people to remove the forest, build in areas where they shouldn't, waterproof the surface through whatever construction they have so that the water moves faster coming down the hill, and then they can't handle it down here. So we're the recipients of what's actually going on a little bit above us.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, panelists. My name is Ken from Central Cebu. My question is for Sir William. You mentioned about man-made forests with non-native species, which is not helping. How do we combat this for LGUs or communities planning for forest restoration in their areas?
Okay, one of the things is to make a list of what trees grew there before. You go to the oldest couple or person in the barangay and ask them, when you were little, what kind of trees did you find in the area? That will give you an idea what grows there. Then you can find out, is it still there or can we bring it back again? It'll be a mixture of the term, well, there's rainforestation, which is one way of it's a mixture. You use up to 40 species per hectare. If you're a farmer, you can mix the fruit trees, the food trees, the forest trees, the fiber trees. You can mix it all in one system. You can plant in the ground when it's young, so you can have crops. You can have shade-tolerant crops when it gets bigger and whatnot. So you actually open up markets. If you have a monoculture, like they've been doing, well, when I came here 1973, 74, they stopped using teak in southern Cebu. Why? Because during the summer, the big teak leaves would fall off and they wouldn't hit the ground. They were so large and it was like putting paper on it. So you have a person come by and whatnot, nice cigarillo, ilabay ang kung cigarillo, naisunog. So they said the teak was actually more of a fire hazard during the summer than it can survive. but it doesn't help the area around it with the thing. So you want to use trees native to the Philippines if possible, and then mix those. So you have your wildlife coming back also, because they're part of the system, whether it's birds, bats, your civet cats, if you want. The thing is to plan it beforehand. Don't go getting seedlings and you don't know where the seedling came from or what species goes in that area with the thing. If you're up in the mountain, there are certain trees that will not grow there because they're for coastal areas. So you match the species with the area that you have, but you do that before. And then you make a list of maybe 15, 20, 30 different species. And then if I have private land, I can choose what's available and what I need with the thing. So it's a pre-planning.
Thank you so much, sir.
So, sir, if, for example, I'm sure that a lot of companies will now choose forest restoration as one of their CSR projects moving forward, can they reach out to you? Do you have like a current database of the species of trees or seedlings that you recommend to be planted in a specific area? And what are the specific species that we thought would be helpful but we should avoid?
Well, most of you are familiar with mahogany. Mahogany actually comes from the upper Amazon basin. This one. We have a native mahogany, but nobody plants it because there's not enough planting material. But so you have the exotic. It fruits every year after 5 years. Your dipterocarp, or your lawaan species, takes between 9 and 18 years to seed the first time. It can't compete with these fast-growing trees and whatnot, so it wipes them out. They don't even get started. We're working with Ale Land in their, they had the condemned subdivision up in the top of the mountain in Pungol with the thing. We're restoring 65 hectares on the inside the Mananga watershed, and then there's another 50 or so outside. So far, we have 110 species of trees in that. A lot of them are native species, and we have 9 species of lawaan trees there, some of which are ready to seed now with the thing. We have a list of, it's not in this edition, our first edition, we have 6 pages of trees that will attract birds, bats, and mammals. Other than the bats with the thing. If you want to plant, one of the ones that's interesting that you can do are the ficus, your bolete species. And the bolete species are small-leaved generally. They attract the birds and they attract the bats and whatnot, so the seeds are dispersed and whatnot. They make good street trees, except for the mist sometimes of the thing. So
the monsters associated.
Yeah. You have to be careful what you plant there on the street thing. So, and who's going to harvest it if it's a fruit tree the thing. But again, it goes back to planning. We have at the foundation we have lists that we can send out electronically if people are interested in that with the thing. And we have one that they have for. Let me see, Argao. We have another list down there. Also, the Biodiversity Center in Argao, in CTU, I'm sure would have their recommendations also as to what's available and what to use, because they do a lot of field work in biodiversity with the thing.
Last question.
I think it's last question siguro from NC engineer. DSWD nag-promote sila or nasila ginahatag na water filtration na kit, no? As water expert, unsay masulti niyo na, sir? Kay there are some chemical expert po na dili daw siya safe kay dili masala ang mga chemicals. Nya ang gi-promote sa DSWD, drinkable na daw siya pag iagi daw dito sa water filtration nila na kit na gina-distribute karon. Unsay masulti sa MCWD ano?
Sir, di lang siguro kumukuan sa DSWD kay ni-coordinate sila namo, sir, ni tan-aw rami sa ilahang machine. But sir, sa amo, gitawag na siya og MST, Mobile Siphon Tank. Sir, ang amo, I will be talking about our facility. Kana sa sir, drinkable, yun na. Kay, if ever, muagi ang El Nino, sir, amo na siyang i-deploy sa mountain barangays. Then, ang mga tao, sir, dili yun na siya mo inom. Kaya nagtanaw dito sa unahan ay naglunang kabaw. So, kami, sir, mo inom yun mi. Among pakita sa tao nga mainom yun siya. Then, kana siya, sir, grant na siya sa JICA, sa Japan. Very kuang gyud guys, sir. Gamay lang siya ang iyang production, but makasave gyud siya og community. Lubog kayo, makita niya na mo, sir, kung mo coordinate ka na, mo gusto ka mo tanaw. Makita ni mo, sir, nga lubog kayo ang sapa, but ang iyang product, sir, makapasar gyud sa standards. So, di lang kumukuhan sa DSWD, sir, ha, kay basig masayop unya ko, kuhan. Pero kana nga mga machine, ni-exist na siya, then nagamit ang MCWD, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Jim Ray. And mga kauban mo natay igong oras no na nalingaw ko basa sa CARS nga information sheet. Hopefully no basahon ni sa ato ang mga LGUs nga gipang apuran ani no. And again, we would like to thank all of our panelists for all of the very informative insights that you've shared with all of our viewers and our friends from the media this Tuesday morning. Let's give them a big round of applause. Dagan kaayong salamat, Sir William, MCWD, and hopefully no this will definitely not be the last of our discussions. So mga kauban, daghan kayong salamat for tuning in. Again, thank you very much, your venue partner, Waterfront Cebu City Hotel and Casino, Manila Bankers Assurance, IMG, Kaiser International Health Group Incorporated, Kaiser Medical Center, and Los Reyes Optical. Kaninyong tanan. Thank you very much, mga kauban. This has been Andrea Patania Matthew.
And I'm Eric Espina.
See you all next Tuesday morning for Open Line News Media Forum here on MyTV Cebu.